I got married at 28 and I'm divorcing at 29, part 9. For my religious police. For me personally, I will have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but I will expose them. Okay? Narcissistic abuse requires your silence in order to survive, and that is intentional. It's not always loud, it's not always violent, it's psychological, it's strategic, and it's designed to keep you confused. And because people who have narcissistic personality disorder are often charming in public, people are not going to believe you unless you speak up. Staying silent does not protect you. It protects the narcissist. That silence is where the abuse grows and the cycle will continue. You can choose to suffer in silence if you want, but I'm going to continue to call it out because I'm fully aware that abusers thrive in the silence of their victims. Now, one thing that I think is core and essential and that I did not know the gravity of before dealing with a narcissist, a true narcissist. Again, we're talking about somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. Pay attention to people who have unresolved abandonment wounds. In my case, he was adopted, and he told me that he always felt like an outsider in his family. And he would repeat the same stories over and over again. One example of this was he told me that for Christmas, his sister got a computer and he got a hat. He was adopted, and not just that, the family that he was adopted into never treated him the same as his sister who was not adopted. And one of the things he would tell me is he always believed that he had to perform to receive love. And he did overachieve in life. He got into the top US boarding school. He got into multiple Ivy League universities. He had a Wall Street internship from his sophomore year. So he's been overachieving in life. But his drive and his ambition, it wasn't passion. It was coming from a place of pain. So he built his entire identity around being too valuable to abandon. And when somebody builds their entire identity around being too valuable to abandon, they forfeit authenticity. Because it's a performance. They become a performer. They study you. They mirror you. They shapeshift and become your ideal partner. And they don't do this out of love. It's done out of fear of being abandoned by you. Here are some examples of how this abandonment wound actually showed up. I remember breaking up with him, and at the time we were living in New York City, and he threatened to unalive himself over the balcony in New York City. And you have to understand that actually happens in New York City. People do that. And so suddenly I wasn't just trying to leave, I was trying to not be responsible for somebody unaliving themselves. And it's also one of the reasons why it's been so hard for me to separate myself from him, because I know he has this deep fear of being abandoned and I didn't want him to harm himself. What I'm able to see now, and I hope that you're able to see this too if you're in a similar situation, is that that is a form of control. It is emotional manipulation. Another way this abandonment wound shows up is when they try to lock you in early. I've said this before, but they like to do it through marriage, through getting a house with you, through having kids with you. And that all sounds perfectly normal, right? But they like to do it on an accelerated timeline. They build a life around keeping you close because they do not want to be abandoned by you. And it seems perfectly normal to everyone else on the outside, but if you know, you know. So the more obligations and ties that you have to them, the safer they will feel. They're going to become a version of themselves that they believe you cannot abandon. He started to bulk up. He got super muscular, non-stop protein like it was a job. And I just thought he had this newfound passion for lifting weights. After we got married, he was complaining about all the food he has to eat and all the protein he has to consume to maintain this image. He studied me. He asked me about the people that I dated previously. Everybody was at least 6 foot. Everybody was athletic. Everybody had muscles, right? So they're going to study the people that you dated previously, and they're going to try to match up or be better because they want to be somebody that you cannot abandon. People with abandonment wounds will also sabotage anything that they believe will pull you away from them. I already told you guys about how he tried to sabotage my career on Wall Street. His fear being that if I got promoted, I would stay in New York and he would be abandoned. And another time when we weren't engaged yet, I'd gone to a conference and I met this public figure. He had always looked up to this guy. He loved his podcast, he loved his YouTube, he loved his content, and he was always talking about him. This public figure had connected with me on socials and was trying to take me out to dinner. I let him know that I'm in a relationship right now, but I'm happy to connect business-wise. When this is happening, I'm completely transparent with my boyfriend at the time. Now, the moment my boyfriend at the time realized that this public figure was trying to take me out, he unfollowed this guy. I'm telling you, this is somebody who he looked up to for years. He's the one who told me about his content. He was always listening to this guy's podcast. He stopped listening to the podcast. He was like, nope, I'm done. I can't. Like, I don't like him anymore. He no longer watches his content. And I was like, why is all of that necessary? He was completely respectful. He completely understood that I was in a relationship. And I've shown you the messages. Nothing about it was disrespectful. But it wasn't about that. It was about the fact that a multimillionaire public figure was trying to take me out to dinner. And this triggered his abandonment wound because he sees this public figure as somebody who could potentially be the reason that I would abandon him down the line. And what's so funny about it is, despite the fact that he was no longer supporting this public figure, he was running around telling his friends and his coworkers that this person asked me out on a date. So he used the opportunity for bragging rights to be like, well, my girl's being asked out by this person, but he no longer supports him because he sees him as a threat. And that is what narcissism looks like. It's insecurity dressed up as confidence. Now, was he aware of his abandonment issues? Yes, he was aware of his abandonment issues. He's actually been seeing a therapist, but he hasn't been dealing with his abandonment wounds with the therapist. And again, individual therapy rarely works for people with narcissistic personality disorder because there's nobody there to ground them and keep them in check with reality. They don't take the mask off. They don't take it off in therapy. So when I picked up on certain things after we got married and I suggested that we go to couples therapy, it was the best decision that I ever made. Because as I said, the couples therapist immediately clocked that he lacked empathy. So people with narcissistic personality disorder, they lack empathy. They can perform it, but it's a very surface level performance. Now, if you've been with somebody who has these deep abandonment wounds, you already know how hard it is to leave. Even if they're hurting you, you don't want to be the one who abandons them because you already know that they have those childhood triggers. So there's a part of you that wants to protect that little child inside of them because you know that they're hurting, but you're doing it out of pity and out of fear of being the one who abandons him next. Do not let the guilt stop you from leaving a situation that is harming you. Do not allow it to stop you. So many of us were abandoned by our parents, by our families as children, and we chose to heal instead of hurting others. So many of us were neglected emotionally, physically by our parents. In my case, I chose to heal. So what happens is a lot of us, we choose to protect others. We choose to take care of others because we don't want them to feel what we felt as children. But you have to remember that it is a choice. Whatever you do with your pain, it's a choice. Some of us chose to heal and we chose to be better people, but people with NPD, they do not choose healing. They choose to weaponize their wounds against the people closest to them. And if you're their partner, you're getting the worst of it. They're going to sabotage your career, your peace, your joy. Because the more you grow and the more that you thrive, it triggers that abandonment wound in them. Because they believe that you're going to abandon them if you achieve a certain level of success. In my case, he created fake accounts. He left hate comments on my videos from fake accounts. He would attempt to suppress my content because his fear was, if I get too big, I'm going to abandon him. So despite the fact that I was a content creator before we got married, and he was fully aware of that, he was trying to sabotage my growth as a creator as well. What's funny about it is that he benefited from people knowing who I was, because he would come home and tell me that his clients follow me and they would tell him, oh, your wife is the finance baddie, I love her content. So he gets a little kick out of it, right? It's a little ego boost for him, but at the same time, his abandonment wound is triggered the more that he sees me rising. And even right now as we speak, instead of acknowledging his wrongdoing, he's trying to make threats to sabotage my career, because his objective right now is to get me down so bad that I have no choice but to stay with him. But he picked the wrong one. Now, if you're going through something like this and you're leaving the situation, what I will say is that the peace in all of this is knowing that you never knew the real them. You knew and you loved the mask, the show that they put on. You did not love the person because they never showed you who they truly were. That's the saddest part of all of this, because they never love themselves enough to face themselves. So they lie, especially to themselves, and they will lie to you up until the end. I do pray for his healing. I pray that him and others suffering from NPD will choose to go back to that little wounded child. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with the people who are trying to help you. You have to face yourself in order to heal. Until you acknowledge the wounds and until you're able to see the pain, the abandonment, the betrayal for what it was, until you're able to confess what has taken place and how it's made you feel, healing will not take place. In any event, his unresolved trauma and pain was never mine to bear. If you're in a similar situation, remember that you are not his therapist and you are not his savior. So where are we now? He's threatening to sabotage my career to get me to be quiet about his wrongdoing. Now, I have withheld a lot of information about what has taken place here. I have honestly given so much grace. I've honored him as much as I can despite everything that he's put me through. And if you knew, I have chosen to withhold that information so far. But I also know that the truth is what sets people free. Him and his lawyer have said that this little story time has already gone viral. And to that I say, if you call this viral, wait until I finish the story time with my receipts. I really haven't gotten to the meat of the matter. I really haven't given you guys the full tea out of kindness. And I am a really kind person until I'm not. Now, he wouldn't be a true narcissist if he didn't try to silence me and make himself a victim in a situation where he was the orchestrator of his own undoing. But you know what? I dare him to F around and find out. Stay healthy and wealthy.